and good morning, everyone. My name is Worku Burayu, and I'm a research specialist at Maricopa County Cooperative Extension in Field Crops IPM program. And today I'm going to present on application of balanced phosphorus and potassium fertilizer, improved yield and yield components of alfalfa. As you know, alfalfa standards normally give the highest productivity. Thank you, Taylor. So alfalfa standards provide the highest yield in the first 2 to 3 years and then decline thereafter, where sometimes reestablishing the stand becomes really necessary. But as you know, reestablishing is costly. So there should be other options that improve alfalfa standards as well as yields. Towards that end, we conducted several trials on fertilizers that give higher yields and yield components of alfalfa. One of the trials that has been conducted is just in this field behind us, one of the field, if I correctly remember, Jason. On-farm trial was conducted, taking different rates of phosphorus, particularly 200, 400, and up to 800 pounds of monoammonium phosphate. And fertilizer of alfalfa with phosphorus increased yields significantly. But fertilizing alfalfa beyond 200 pounds monoammonium phosphate or 104 pounds of P2O5, that is equals to 200 pounds of monoammonium phosphate, give no yield advantage for alfalfa. So 200 is equal to 800 statistically. And also we conducted another field trials that consider different phosphorus sources because there was demand to see which phosphorus fertilizer sources are more effective than the other. We took monoammonium phosphates, phosphoric acid, and as well as superphos, and saw no significant differences among the three of those sorts of fertilizer. They are equally effective for alfalfa production. So what should be considered is just ease of management as well as also cost of that fertilizer is more important than the agronomic advantage of the yields among those things. And then we continued to see really which combination of fertilizer is very good for alfalfa production also. So we found individually P fertilization increased about 8% as compared to the yield, the plot that not receiving P. And also a slight increment was obtained by applying individually K fertilizer, which is 4%. But our intention is to see the balance of those P and the K, if it gives more yield advantage than the individual components of P or K. So by conducting that, we found really significant difference of yield among the combination of those P and the K. And so you see, we took 3 rates of phosphorus, 0, 100, and 125 pounds P2O5, as well as also 0, 100, and 300 pounds K2O, arranged in factorial arrangements, but in complete block design. So we found significant differences in yield and the yield components of alfalfa. But today I'm going to talk more specifically on the yield components of alfalfa, because we talked so much about the yield. What are the indicators of this alfalfa yield, or what are the yield components that highly affect alfalfa yield? And we can direct our fertilization to that yield components. So the indicators of alfalfa yield, there are about 5, 6, or 7 indicators of alfalfa yield. The most important ones are live plants per area. Live plants, when I mean, is the plants that come or emerge from the seeds, from the soil, is called plant. And the tillering is called shoot or stem. Just to clear the confusion of sometimes we call shoot, sometimes we call stem, or sometimes we call plants for alfalfa. So the direct emerging plants is called plant, and the shoot that comes from that plant or the auxiliary bud of that plant is called shoot or stem. So live plant per area is one of the indicators that most often used as indicator of alfalfa plants. For highly productive stand, 4 to 6 plants should be considered as a good stand for the plants. Usually, but correlation between live plants per unit area to the yield is really very slow, because of the fact that the decreased plant can compensate with increased shoots per unit plants. So the other, better to consider replacing if but alfalfa stand density is lower than 5 plants per square foot. In our experiments, we kept constant the plants per unit area or per square root foot, that is 5, to decrease the discrepancy that comes from different density of plants. The second indicator of alfalfa yield is stems per plant. This is the stem or shoot per plant. So the density of stems rather than plants is really a better indicator of the adequacy of a stand, because this indicates the vigorous and healthy of the plants. Usually, the stem should be counted when about 6 to 10 inches tall, and an increase in stem per plant compensates for few plants, the one I discussed before, will often maintain yield. The third one is the most reliable indicator of stands or yield of alfalfa. This is number of stem or shoot per square foot. So in many cases, this can be a better indicator of a productive field, reflects the health and the vigor of the plants. Usually fields with 55 shoots or stems per square foot produce maximum yields. Different literature indicates that 55 shoots or stem per square foot produces maximum yield. There is expectation that yield become low if the range is less than 40 to 50 stems. But once the stems numbers fall below 40, it is better to consider re-establishing or to take other options, the options that I'm going to discuss. 4 is mass per shoot. This is also very good indicators of alfalfa yield, because alfalfa yield is the result of mass per shoot, plants per area, and shoots per plant. The 5th one is uniformity of the stand. This is very good because of the different factors. Uniformity of the stand become sometimes spatchy, sometimes full of weeds. So factors to consider include is the uniformity of the stand and the weed situation. In that case, is the weed competition affecting the number of stems per square foot, or other diseases, the one that I mentioned, root rot affected the area and the density of the area is low. Are there areas with field where the population is below the desired number? This is also very important indicator of alfalfa yield. Plant height. Why plant height is real indicator of alfalfa yield? We must consider plant height when determining particularly the cutting time. About 28 inches of the maximum alfalfa height, the maximum plant height is about 28 inches, usually recommended when to cut. Nodes of the plant, internode lengths and trifoliate are also the very important indicators of alfalfa yield. But in our experiment, there was no significant difference among trifoliate of different application of phosphorus or potassium. It is only the internode lengths that affect significantly when regarding node internode lengths and trifoliate. So we conducted the experiment with the 3 replication of phosphorus and potassium and found those results. The result is on this. So in this case, you see it is 12 weeks after planting with no phosphorus, with no potassium. You see the growth and the performance of the plant as compared to the 125 PTO5 and 100 KTO. So very good performance, well growth and uniformity as compared to the no fertilizers rate. The same, no plant, no phosphorus and no potassium plot exhibited very low performance after first cutting, 3 weeks after first cutting, as compared to the 125 PTO5 and the 100 KTO fertilized plot, which is uniform and high yielding. So those yield indicators, the alfalfa yield components, affected the yield, but not equally affecting the yield of alfalfa. Some are significantly affecting the yields, but some slightly affecting the yield. When you see the shoots per plant, it has significantly affected the yield of alfalfa, and to the stem point, linearly affecting the yield, but after a certain point, the increment of shoots per plant has no advantage. And also, shoot per square foot affecting significantly the alfalfa yield. And it is about 60% or 75% of yield affected in that cases. Regarding the one I talked, mass per shoot is also significantly affecting the alfalfa yield, as well as also maximum height of the plant affected significantly the alfalfa yield. In our case, stems per plant, stems per square foot, mass per stem, maximum height, and internal lengths significantly affected alfalfa forage yield. The most important thing is we found 11 shoots per plant, 53 to 55 shoots per square foot, 0.55 gram per shoot, not pound, 0.55 gram per shoot, and 29 inches maximum height of alfalfa plant gave the highest forage yield in our case. So if those yield components give the highest relation with hay yield, which fertilizer affect most those yield components of alfalfa? The next figure is indicating these things. Regarding the yield, if you see those star, both two, at 125 pounds of PTO5 and 100 KTO, we got maximum yield, as well as also 125 and 300 give maximum yield regarding yield. Regarding shoot per square foot, it is the more application of potassium from 100 to 300 give more shoot per square foot area. So the effect of potassium is pronounced on shoot per square foot area. And if you see shoot per plant, it is highly affected by 125 and 100, which is 11 shoot. The one I mentioned before, 11 shoot per plant. It is also 11 shoot per plant if you see the 125 and the 300. So the greater impact of potassium is on shoot per plant as well as shoot per square foot. I emphasize this because of the fact that our soil is full of potassium. So why we study if our soil is full of potassium? Because it is calcareous soil, more than 200, sometimes between 180 and 300. So full of potassium, those 180 is even high. But individually, potassium has no significant effect on yield in our case. But when it's combined with phosphorus, it has significant effect on our case. Second point, the potassium alfalfa removed from the soil about 60 pounds of potassium per ton of alfalfa. So the average yield in here is about 8.4. But usually we found more than 10 tons per acre. In our field condition, we found from 10 to 70 tons per acre. So if 60 pounds is only 4 tons, so you can calculate what 10 tons per acre is about 600. But in our case, it's only 320 and 250. This was conducted on more of sandy soil, which is 225, 75% sandy. So we found that significant difference can be obtained if we mix with phosphorus, because phosphorus activates, potassium also activates phosphorus, and phosphorus also activates potassium. The most important thing of potassium is also to decrease the sodium content in the soil as well as in the plants. Sodium is high also, which is a negative effect on the plant. So potassium decreases also the sodium content of soil. Exactly. Is that because the low release of potassium, that there is high potassium in the soil, but not effective for the plant. So what phosphorus make is more release of potassium immediately for the plants. That is a positive effect of phosphorus. Not only phosphorus, but potassium also affects phosphorus in the same amount. It is obvious phosphorus is not released easily. The natural in the soil is bound to organic matter or to the clay content of the soil. So when we mix those things, one has positive effect on the other, phosphorus to potassium, potassium to phosphorus. Another question, maybe? So I'm going to summarize this. So to answer the question, should I maintain my alfalfa yield? Evaluate your established and newly seeded stands when about 6 to 10 inches tall, and determine needs. Remember 4 to 6 plants and 40 to 55 stems per square foot for established stands. For the newly stands, it is obvious. We've got good stands, but established fields, particularly after 3 years, reduce the stand yield as well as yield is expected. So to establish or to re-establish the stand, just take this yield components or indicator of yields and determine if it is required. In our present condition, application of 125 pounds per acre P2O5 combined with 100 pounds per acre KTO appeared adequate to maximize yield as compared to higher P alone or K alone, or not receiving P and K. We found application of 100 pounds KTO increasing from 100 to 300 has no yield advantage. Even the yield is more better at 100 KTO than pure. So there are some references indicated here. Thank you very much. So if you have question, please. Thank you. It is a good comment, really, very excellent comment. And that's why I put more research is needed to refine P and K fertilizer recommendation to evaluate the cost benefit advantage for irrigated alfalfa production. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That is what we are going to do actually. And the long term of soil fertility started development may cost-wise could be feasible, but the potassium effect is for a long term, not for a short term, for 1 year or for 2 years, even not for 3 years. For those who want to stay for 6 years, 7 years, stand at the field, the potassium feasibility may be seen. So it is really good comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Worku. So next we'll have